Have you ever noticed that strange moment? When a woman looks at you for a very brief second, then turns her eyes away as if nothing happened? The strange thing is that tiny second can sometimes be more powerful than 1,000 words. Because some women never say what they feel, but their eyes do it unconsciously. The real question is not whether she was interested in you, but whether you were smart enough to understand what she was trying to hide. There are men who believe that when a woman wants a man, she will say it clearly, or she will approach him directly. But the reality is completely different. The reality is quieter and more complicated. Sometimes the whole story begins with a brief glance in a crowded place, from the way she stands when she talks to you, from a question that seems very ordinary, but in reality was never innocent. And I want you to tell me honestly in the comments. Have you ever felt that a woman was hinting at something to you, but you understood it too late? Because most men only discover the truth after that woman has completely disappeared from their lives. And then, suddenly they remember all the little details they didn't pay attention to at the time. The problem is that women rarely reveal their desires directly, not because they don't know what they feel, but because they observe the man first. They test his method, his presence, his reactions, and even his silence. Sometimes a woman may have made her decision about you within the first 2 minutes, while you are still trying to understand if she is interested or not. Strangely, the moments that reveal a woman's feelings are not the obvious moments, but the silent moments. When she suddenly goes quiet during a conversation, when she looks at you and then smiles as if she remembered something she doesn't want to say, when she asks you a question that seems ordinary but is actually an attempt to find out her place in your life. Most men miss these signals because they are looking for direct acknowledgement. They want clear and explicit proof. But relationships don't actually start this way. They begin in a quieter, more tense manner, as if two people are trying to hide something they both feel. I remember a man who would sit every morning in the same cafe before going to work. He wasn't looking for a relationship, and he didn't even pay much attention to the people around him. He would just come, order his coffee, and sit by the window. After weeks, he started to notice a girl who came almost at the same time. At first, it was just an ordinary coincidence. Then, the coincidences began to repeat in a strange way. The same quick glances, the same slight smile when they meet at the door, the same silent tension that occurs for a moment and then disappears. One day, she was standing next to him waiting for her order. She turned to him and suddenly said, "Do you always sit here alone?" The question seemed ordinary, but it was never ordinary, because when a woman wants to get closer to a man, she often doesn't start by asking directly about him. She starts with a question that just opens the door, as if she is giving him a small chance to enter her world, or allowing her to enter his world. At that time, he didn't understand that. He simply replied, "I just like the quiet." She smiled at him in a strange way, not a polite smile, but the smile of someone who was expecting more than this answer. Then she fell silent for a moment before saying, "Quiet men always have something they don't say." This sentence stuck in his mind all day. And here's where the strange thing happens. The woman who wants a relationship with you doesn't always try to impress you. Sometimes she tries to understand you. She tries to see how you think, how you view things, how you act when you're comfortable or when you're tense. And that's why there are two specific questions. When a woman asks them in a certain way, she is often not gathering ordinary information, but trying to discover if there is a place for her in your life. The first question seems so simple that most men don't pay attention to it. How do you spend your time when you are alone? It may seem like a very ordinary question, but think about it for a moment. Why would a woman care to know what you do when you are alone? Why does she want to know what your life looks like away from people? Because this question is not about time, but about character. She wants to see if you are a man who always runs away from himself, or a man comfortable with his life. She wants to know if you are empty inside, or if you have your own world. A woman is attracted to a man who makes her feel that he has a complete life, not waiting for someone to save him from boredom or loneliness. But most men make a strange mistake here. They start to boast, trying to seem interesting, exaggerating their words, while the woman is actually observing something completely different. She is watching your comfort as you talk about yourself. Do you get tense? Are you trying to prove your worth? Do you seem needy for someone to see you as special? Or do you speak calmly as if you don't need to convince anyone of anything? Women pick up on these details at a frightening speed. There was a young man who worked at a small company. He wasn't the most handsome or the most confident, but he was quiet in a way that made women notice him without understanding why. There was a female colleague who always spoke to him in a slightly different way than the others. She got closer to him, asked him long questions, and laughed even at things that weren't funny. One night after work, they were waiting for the elevator. She suddenly asked him, "What do you do when you get home?" He simply said, "Sometimes I read, sometimes I walk alone, and sometimes I sit without a reason." She looked at him for a few seconds as if she were trying to understand something deeper than the words themselves. Then she said quietly, "I feel like you're someone who is hard to reach." He thought she was joking, but she wasn't joking. Some women are attracted to a man who doesn't reveal himself completely right away, not because he is pretending to be mysterious, but because he has a real depth, because his presence doesn't rely on a lot of words, but on a strange feeling of steadiness. But the problem is that some men, when they sense a woman's interest, ruin everything by trying to rush things. Suddenly, the quiet man turns into someone who seeks attention. He sends messages all the time, watches her responses, gets anxious about any delay, as if his confidence was just a temporary mask. And the woman notices this transformation immediately. At first, she was attracted to his calm presence. Then suddenly, she feels that he has become afraid of losing her even before the relationship has really begun. And this is what most men do not realize. A woman is not only attracted to the man who makes her feel desire, but to the man who makes her feel emotional security. And the man who emotionally collapses quickly, even if he is very nice, often loses his attractiveness without understanding why. Because attraction is not just words. Attraction is a state felt by the other party. Imagine a woman talking to a man, and every action of his indirectly tells her, "I hope you like me." Then imagine another calm man, who listens more than he talks, smiles without tension, does not try to control the conversation, and does not try to impress her with strength. Often the woman will feel a strange comfort with the second one, even if she does not understand the reason directly. And in the midst of all this, the real questions begin to emerge. Not direct questions, but questions that hide behind them emotional curiosity. Like when a woman suddenly asks you, "Have you ever truly loved someone?" Or, "What is the most that makes you withdraw from a relationship?" Or even, "Do you think people can change when they love?" These are not casual conversations. These are attempts to understand your heart without her admitting anything. Strangely, some women, when they like a man, become quieter, not bolder, because they fear their true interest will be revealed. You might see her acting inconsistently at times. She gets closer and then pulls away, looks and then ignores, starts a conversation, and then suddenly disappears. And this is where many men get lost. They think her disappearance means she has lost interest, while sometimes she is just trying to protect herself from overwhelming feelings. There was a girl who talked daily with a man she met by chance. At first, she replied quickly, asked him about his day, remembered small details he mentioned weeks ago. Then suddenly, she became a bit colder, shorter replies, less presence, as if something had changed. The man thought she was no longer interested, so he pulled away. After months, he learned from a mutual friend that she actually liked him, but she felt he didn't see her the same way. So she tried to convince herself to pull away before she got more attached. And this is one of the most misunderstood things by men. Sometimes a woman doesn't pull away because she doesn't want you, but because she has started wanting you more than she should. But here comes the more dangerous point. How do you know her interest isn't just temporary curiosity? The answer often reveals itself in the second secret question, the question that seems very ordinary, but reveals almost everything. What type of woman really catches your attention? On the surface, it seems like a simple, curious question. But in reality, the woman here is not asking you about other women. She is asking you about herself. She is trying to see if she resembles the type you like, or not. Can you see her in a different way? Or is she just a passing girl in your life? And that's why you will notice something strange immediately afterward. If you describe certain traits, she will unconsciously start comparing herself to them. If you say you like quiet women, she will become quieter with you. If you say you like intelligent women, she will start to show that side more. If you say you are attracted to natural, unpretentious women, she will feel a strange comfort talking to you without pretense. When a woman is attracted to a man, she doesn't always say, "I'm attracted to you." Sometimes she just tries to get closer to the image he prefers. But the problem is that some men respond in a way that completely ruins the atmosphere. He starts listing a long list as if he's in a job interview, or he tries to appear as a man who doesn't care about any woman, or he exaggerates his aloofness, thinking it makes him mysterious. While the most attractive answers are often the simplest and the most honest, because a woman is not just looking for words, but for the feeling behind them. Once, a girl asked a young man, "What type of woman do you like?" He thought for a moment and then said, "The woman with whom I feel I don't have to pretend." She fell silent for a moment, then smiled in a way he couldn't forget later. Because some sentences touch something deep inside a person without a long explanation. And strangely, women remember the feeling more than the words themselves. You might forget exactly what you said, but she won't forget how you made her feel while looking at you. That's why sometimes silence is more important than talking. When you sit with a woman and there is that quiet tension between you, those brief moments when no one speaks, but it doesn't feel completely comfortable or completely uncomfortable. Often, there is something growing beneath the surface, something that neither party wants to acknowledge quickly. But this is where the real test for a man begins. Can he endure this tension calmly? Or does he try to kill the moment with continuous talking? Some men are so afraid of silence that they talk non-stop. They explain, joke, exaggerate their energy, just so they don't feel the tension. But women often feel attracted to the man who is not afraid of silence. The man who can look at her calmly, without rushing, as if he is completely comfortable with her presence. This kind of presence is very rare today. Because most people live in a state of constant validation. They want to be interesting all the time, while true attraction sometimes lies in comfort, in stability, in the feeling that this man is not chasing acceptance. At a certain moment, the woman begins to send more serious signals. She starts trying to understand your emotional state. She asks you about past relationships, but not just out of curiosity. She wants to know if your heart is still stuck on someone, or if you are really ready to see someone new. You may notice that she becomes unusually attentive to your little details. She remembers the name of a movie you mentioned once. She notices your mood changes even when you try to hide it. She knows from your voice that something is bothering you. And here comes the thing that many men do not acknowledge. Sometimes a woman becomes interested in a man before she admits it to herself, and that's why her behavior becomes contradictory. One moment she is very close, and the next moment she is very distant. One moment she opens up a conversation for hours, and the next moment she disappears without explanation. Because she is fighting a feeling she doesn't want to seem obvious. In the end, the most attractive men are not necessarily the most handsome, nor the most talkative, but the men who make a woman feel she is in front of a real person, a person who is not playing a role, not chasing attention, and not trying to dominate by force. A man who, when he looks at her, makes her feel that he truly sees her, not just trying to win her over, and this feeling is very rare. That's why when a woman finds a man who possesses this presence, she starts asking those little questions that seem ordinary to everyone. But for her, they are a subtle attempt to know just one thing. Could there really be something between us? Or am I imagining all of this alone? In those very moments, everything becomes strangely sensitive. The tone of your voice, the way you look, even the timing of your response sometimes. Because feelings at the beginning are not clear and explicit. They are like a light smoke slowly filling the space. You feel it, but you can't grasp it directly. That's why some relationships begin before anyone even utters the word love. They start from slightly longer glances, from an increased interest in details, from questions that hide a much greater desire than they appear to have. And the strangest thing is that some men live these moments fully, only to discover the truth years later. He suddenly remembers how she used to look at him when he talked to another woman, how she would always ask him if he got home, how she would laugh differently with him, and how she would try to find out everything about his life without ever saying she was interested in him. Then he understands late that all those little details were never random. Have you ever noticed that some women never directly acknowledge their interest, but every little action they take says the opposite? Long glances that disappear quickly, interest in details that no one else remembers, and a simple question that feels like there's something much bigger behind it. The problem is that most men wait for very clear signals, while when a woman starts to feel real emotions, she often becomes quieter and more complex. There was a man who was talking to a girl very casually through work. No outings together, no confessions, just short conversations every day. But he began to notice that she remembered small things he had said weeks ago. Once he casually mentioned the name of a song he liked, and after a while she suddenly sent it to him saying, "I thought of you when I heard it." Moments like this seem simple, but they are never random, because when a woman cares about a man, her mind starts to focus on him in a different way. You notice her voice when it changes, her mood when she's tired, and even her silence. But the strange thing is that sometimes she suddenly pulls away despite all this attention. She responds coldly, disappears for a bit, as if she's trying to escape from something. The truth is that some women, when they feel they are starting to truly attach, become afraid. Not of the man himself, but of the feelings that are growing inside them. And here many men make a mistake. They think she should be clear all the time, while she is sometimes just trying to protect herself. At that stage, she starts asking strange questions that seem very ordinary, like, "What type of woman do you like?" She's not really asking about women. She's asking about herself without saying it. She's trying to know if she's close to the image you want or not. That's why she watches your answer more carefully than you expect. And there's another sign that most men don't notice. When a woman starts to include you in the small details of her day, she sends you a silly situation that happened to her, tells you something trivial, or laughs with you about details that don't mean anything to anyone else. These aren't just ordinary conversations. This is an attempt to create a special space between you two. But the most revealing thing about a woman's feelings isn't the words, but her looks. The woman who cares about you looks at you differently, no matter how much you try to hide it. Even her jealousy is quiet and silent. She may not say anything when talking to another woman, but her features change for a brief moment and then quickly return to normal. In the end, most relationships don't start with a direct confession, as people think. They begin with very small details, a gaze that lingers too long, a question that hides interest, or a strange silence that makes both parties feel that there's something unspoken. And if you've made it this far, let me know in the comments. Have you ever felt that a woman was hiding her interest in you this way? And don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you enjoy this kind of realistic psychological content. Because some feelings aren't hidden in words, but in the small details that only the person who pays close attention notices.